we just went over a nightmare, and we woke up, was like yesterday. Millions of people were relieved, especially you, that you live now in United Kingdom, and you look at it from far away. But that nightmare is really personal for you, because America lived a similar nightmare in the 74 with Nixon, Watergate, and an impeachment, and all of this. But you had a chance to be in the White House, and a lot of people talking about Biden is the right man to bring calmness and normalcy to the White, and respectability too. You went to the White House and you met Joe Biden there, and he left an impression on you. Tell us a little bit about your first time meeting Joe Biden as a 16 years old high school student.
Well, we had a program, and it still exists today. It's called Close Up in the United States. And basically, each state sends several hundred students to spend a week in Washington, D.C., learning how their government works. And these students are selected on the basis of their academic achievement, activities involved in politics, that sort of thing. And myself and my good friend Joe Martineau, who's now an attorney in St. Louis, and another very good friend who unfortunately passed away in our senior year, Michael Webb, the three of us were selected by our school to represent Avon High School from Avon, Massachusetts. And in 1974, of course, we were in the middle of the Watergate crisis. It pretty much began shortly after President Nixon took office in 73, having won virtually every state except Massachusetts and the District of Columbia. And he basically had a landslide reelection. But during that reelection, there was a break-in at the Democratic National Committee in the Watergate Hotel. And as a result of that, the main question was follow the money. And who knew what when? How much did the president know? And so even as young kids, keep in mind, we didn't have the technology of today. We didn't have mobile telephones, let alone smartphones. We didn't even have beepers in 1974. We just had paper newspapers. And so we would go to the library every day and read the New York Times and read the Washington Post, because we were far from both of those centers, but we wanted to stay up on what was going on. And there were two young reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, who we followed very, very closely. Now you see Bob Woodward's new book, Rage. He's a good 10, 15 years older than I am. And, he's still, breaking norms and knocking down doors and doing whatever is necessary to get to the story. And so as young kids, we were fascinated with what he knew. So during this close-up program, we had many opportunities. We visited pretty much every cabinet level office. We visited the Congress. We visited, because of an invitation, the White House to get a tour of it. And we actually saw President Nixon, who looked terrible, by the way. And he was there to greet for a couple of seconds I think it was the Chief Eagle Scout of the Year of the Boy Scouts on the balcony of the Sheraton Hotel. And he came out and talked to him, and there were 300 of us that were literally standing across from him, cheering and clapping and being very polite. And then he finished with the Boy Scout, turned, waved his hands and said, "See you all later, thank you." And on he went. But still, that was the closest at that moment that I'd ever come to a United States president in 1974. And then up on Capitol Hill, my two friends and I got onto the subway system. Now, a lot of people don't know that the buildings on Capitol Hill are separated by a good long walking distance. And you can't really get from the Capitol itself to those without the underground system or underground walkways. And there is actually a subway car system that takes you from the Capitol building over to the Senate office building. So my friends and I were seated in one of these cars, and in steps Senator Heinz from California, from Pennsylvania, excuse me. He would later die in a helicopter crash, and the newly elected young senator from Delaware, Joe Biden. He was literally 3 months into office, or 2 months into office at that point. He'd just lost his wife and kids. We did not have that information at the time, but we're sitting across from them. And as they got into the car, they were deep in some sort of policy discussion, and then they saw these 3 future voters sitting across from them, stopped their conversation, and immediately took an interest in us, which we thought was fantastic because we're just kids and we're thinking, wow, these 2 senators are. And they introduced themselves and shook hands. And I remember Heinz had the most incredible handshake of any politician I'd ever experienced. I mean, it was firm. It didn't break your hand. His muscles had muscles, and it was a man who had shaken a lot of hands,
a lot of practice.
And Joe, and they were very, very nice to us. They asked us about close-up, which I'm sure they already knew about, because I'm sure they've asked that question many times. But they did what is missing today. They took an interest in these 3 young people sitting across from them, and for the very short ride, we were the most important people in their lives in that moment. And as we got off of the subway together, they shook our hands goodbye again, and Joe put his hand on my shoulder and just said, keep doing what you're doing. And it was, when you're 16 and you've already been bitten by the politics bug, that's all you need to hear. And a few years later, I had the opportunity during the Obama-Biden White House, there was an event to say something to him. I said, Mr. Vice President, you don't remember me because when you last saw me, I was 16 years old sitting across from you on the subway. And I told him what he had done and how important he made us all feel in that moment. And he kind of smiled and he kind of ducked his head down and popped the hand on the shoulder in the exact same way and said, I'm glad you kept doing what you're doing. And that to me was just kind of closing a loop. And it really, cemented to me how good a person Joe Biden really is. The fact that he has been through such challenge and fire. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like, to bury your young wife and daughter, to have a son seriously injured, Hunter, to then have to bury years later your older son, Beau Biden, who, we all know was standing behind Joe over these last few weeks. And, he's said more than once that he wishes he was standing behind Beau as he was about to take the oath of office because he was just as good a person. And it showed me the innate goodness and the innate positivity. And that's, I think, what has kept me going through the Bush years, through the Reagan years, through a lot of what we've seen now with Trump, is that there are always better days ahead if we can make it. And, he's demonstrating today as we talk on Monday that better days are ahead and there's not much he's going to be able to do about it. But on his way out, he's tweeting away and saying basically that he fired Mike Esper, even though Esper told the world that he had put together a letter of resignation, 3, 4, 5 days ago. But, Trump had to stick the knife in and say, no, he was terminated, and all caps. And you think it's so childish. It's so petty. It is so beneath the office of the presidency. And, every time I go into the Brady press briefing room and I see that photo of James Brady in a wheelchair with his wife and the scissors in his hand and the red ribbon that was just cut to dedicate the James Brady Memorial White House press briefing room, there's a sense of awe, even as a cynical, hard-boiled journalist, that you are sitting in a room where only 48 other people can sit, because that's all the number of chairs and anybody else has to stand. And this is a room where so much history has happened, and to see it so soiled by Sean Spicer, then Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and now Katie McEnany, to see that room in this administration went for a full year without a press briefing, to see the parade of props behind the president in that room when he came to talk about all the good things they were doing on COVID. It was just disgraceful because, yes, I mean, Josh Earnest was as political as they come. He was as cagey as they come, but he didn't stand at that podium and turn it into a propaganda factory. So yeah, I'm very happy to have seen that side of Joe and others, and I'm very happy to, be able to then write that down in the form of an article to talk about history past as prologue, and to have our national newspapers say we want to put this in our Saturday magazine, which they're going to do. So it was
wonderful. This is wonderful. The very personal, intimate story, and not a lot of people will have that chance to have that anyway, because we all very cynical, as you said, about politician and politics itself becoming like a circus, and that's why the Republicans send the clowns and TV host, TV reality host to the circus, and the Democrats tend to send thoughtful Harvard graduates, people who want to be in the public service. That's a little bit the generalization, but as a young 16-year-old boy, high school, meeting and being in the White House, or revered and kind of has respectability. And you told us the story the first day, the handshake, and the patting on the shoulder from politicians at the first time to meet. How do you, nowadays with social media, snapshot and tweets and all of that, how do you tell the story to the 16 years old kids? Your kids yourself, you were telling me that they voted for the first time. How do you tell the story when you told the story even to your kids? What were their reaction?
Oh, much the same. They don't. I don't think they get the. At first, they didn't understand the enormity of the responsibility of voting. They've never lived in the United States, so I think it's, they're half Dutch, half American, because they've got that mixed blood in them, and I don't think I've done a good job of telling them enough about their American heritage until this year. I mean, they only get what they know from Facebook and other news sources, but they're also pretty smart cookies. My kids, could sense that this guy was a jerk. They could sense that he was not taking the job seriously. And, I never, how some households will say, you will vote this way or else. And it's never been that way. My kids are, my son is in his third year at university, and my daughter's in her second year. And, I basically said, this is how you fill it in to make sure it gets counted. You need to put it into a separate, envelope. You need to then put it, that in with the affidavit. You need to match the signature. You need to make sure that all the data is, so I literally made a 3-minute video, which basically showed them this is what you do at each stage. And still my daughter made a mistake. And, just before she sent it back, I said, no, that has to be this date, not that date. And it's like, because kids don't pay attention to the details. And the only thing I wanted to make sure is whomever they voted for, I wanted their vote to count. And I think since it was their first, we went through the registration process back in February or March when they were all here. And I said, okay, and we sent that along, and they got their ballots, and they said, okay, now what? And, I said, this may not feel terribly important to you, but it's immensely important to me to see you kids exercising this responsibility, this right that you have, that, you really don't have, because we don't live in the Netherlands. So you can't get to vote here in the UK where you do live. So take advantage of it and know that Yours is one of 75 million votes. So I had this conversation with my daughter last night. Yours is one of 75 million votes that went to Joe Biden. Even though we represented a red state, we still, felt really, really good about the fact that our guy won. And that's important.
So even if Trump contesting those males' votes, you have the video.
Well, it's not even a question of having the video. I also made sure that because I didn't trust the U.S. Postal Service,
Yeah.
being abroad, I used a courier service, DHL. So all three envelopes were, as if they had been posted in the United States, but plopped into a DHL envelope.
Oh, wow.
And then they left. And I had a signature saying that they had indeed arrived and been, it took 4 days and boom, they were probably among the earliest ballots to arrive in Tennessee, which is the state we vote. So I was very happy.
Any plan to connect and meet Biden again, or call him and remind him of your story or first meeting? That would be nice if you can, when you come, back home here, and try to meet this guy. Hopefully he is in the White House when you come back here.
Well, I'm sure he will be. And, I'm one of maybe, 1,000 people he interacts with on a daily basis, and then multiply that over 365 days and however many years. I mean, this was back in 2012 when they were running for re-election that I got the chance to say something to him. And, it's not interview worthy. It's not meeting worthy. It is just,
I know
it's an anecdote that I think is more indicative of showing the world who Joe Biden really is. And I think that's where we are.
Well, hopefully he's watching my show here and get that story and give you a call. I know
he has nothing else to do right now.
Nothing to do.
He will be with bated breath watching with open arms.
Exactly.
So I'm
sure. I have about 50 people watching my show, and I know their names. So if they become 51, I know there is someone, maybe the possible Biden. Dennis Campbell, American journalist, lives in the UK. He's been watching and he's telling us a heartwarming story about meeting Joe Biden when he was 16 years old, a high school student. It's a wonderful story. It's a love story. We are in a dire need of stories like that. Keep up the good work and keep in touch. America is still proving that there's still good people out there, and hopefully we are back to respectability and calmness and become boring again.
Yeah, I hope so. The reason I wrote it, Ahmed, was that I was so exhausted after our interview that I realized that I had been running on caffeine and fumes for so long, for the entire week, with lots of media appearances. And I was celebrating, and I told all my friends on Facebook and Twitter, I said, look, guys, I know I need to say something, but I've got nothing at this moment. I'm going to sleep on it. I got a good 10 hours of sleep. And then I got up and I penned that because it was more of a why I feel optimistic about the future and why you should too sort of essay. And I think that's, we can't always be cynical, and we can't always be looking for bad things. We've got to be able to know that, there are going to be good people in every department again, and we're going to get through this.
Well, thank you so much again, and we wish you well. We wish this country well. We've suffered enough. We've seen enough, and we're in dire need that we see 2020 leaving and showing us the door. Thank you so much, Dennis, and we'll be talking. It's not going to go away.
I hope to be there someday soon in Minneapolis, where I can sit with you and we can do this live.
Thank you so much. That will be wonderful. Thank you, and say hi to everybody there, and we'll take it from here. We'll make sure it is clean and respectable when you come back and visit.
I like it.
Okay. Thank you so much.